What if I told you that everything you're desperately trying to hold on to is already gone? Your youth, your relationships, your career success, your carefully crafted identity, they're all flowing like water through your fingers. Yet here we are, gripping so tightly that our knuckles turn white, our hearts race with anxiety, wondering why life feels so exhausting and unpredictable. Right now, as you're listening to this, your body is replacing millions of cells. Your breath is changing with each moment. You are literally not the same person who clicked on this video just minutes ago. Something in us rebels against this truth. We scream internally, but I need stability. I need security. I need guarantees that what I build today will still be here tomorrow. This resistance to change, this clinging to permanence in an impermanent world, is what the Buddha identified as the root cause of human suffering. Today, we're diving into one of Buddhism's most profound truths, the reality of impermanence, or anicca. This isn't abstract philosophy. This is a practical roadmap to freedom from the suffering we create when we try to freeze life in place, when we attempt to build permanent castles on shifting sands. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why letting go isn't about losing everything. It's about discovering a way of living that most people never find. You'll learn why the most peaceful people aren't those with the most control, but those who dance most gracefully with change. Take a deep breath with me. Feel the air entering your lungs, knowing it will leave again. Let's explore what it means to live fully in a world where the only constant is change itself. Part 1: The Master's Broken Cup, a Teaching Story. When perfect reveals its true nature. Let me share a story that transformed how I see everything. In ancient China lived a Zen master named Huangpe, renowned for possessing an extraordinary teacup, exquisite porcelain painted with delicate cherry blossoms, passed down through 7 generations of masters. This wasn't just pottery, it was sacred history, containing the wisdom of centuries. Students traveled from distant regions just to witness the master's daily tea ceremony. Watching him drink became meditation itself, the way he held the cup with reverence, how he paused to appreciate steam rising from tea, the mindfulness he brought to each sip. This cup, he would tell his students, has shared tea with 7 generations of awakened beings. It has witnessed more wisdom than most libraries contain. It has been present for countless moments of enlightenment. One spring morning, when cherry blossoms bloomed throughout the monastery gardens, a young monk named Wei Ming arrived. He was 19, burning with devotion and desperate eagerness to prove himself worthy of his teacher's attention. Wei Ming had walked 3 months to reach this monastery, his heart consumed with spiritual longing. But his eagerness carried the nervous energy of someone trying to control outcomes, to make himself indispensable through perfect performance. During the morning tea ceremony, Wei Ming volunteered to assist with preparations. His heart pounded as he carefully lifted the precious cup to carry it from the preparation area, but focused more on the magnitude of his responsibility than the simple act of walking. His sandal caught on a loose stone. Time slowed. Wei Ming stumbled forward, the cup leaving his grasp and spinning through the morning air like a bird that had forgotten to fly. Crash! The cup exploded against the stone courtyard into countless fragments. Each piece caught sunlight differently, creating a constellation of broken beauty. The sound echoed in sudden, deafening silence. Wei Ming's face went white. His hands trembled uncontrollably. Other students gasped in horror. He had destroyed something irreplaceable, a connection to 7 generations of masters. When Master Huangpu emerged and saw the scattered fragments, Wei Ming collapsed to his knees, tears streaming. "Master, I'm so sorry. I've broken your treasured cup, the sacred cup of 7 masters. I've destroyed centuries of history. Please punish me severely. I deserve banishment." But something extraordinary happened. The master smiled, not forced politeness, but genuine joy, as if witnessing something beautiful rather than tragic. He knelt among the fragments and picked up a piece still holding part of a cherry blossom painting, holding it to catch the morning light. "My dear Wei Ming," he said gently, "this cup was broken the moment it was created. I was simply caring for it until its breaking could reveal itself and teach us." Wei Ming looked up, confusion mixing with grief. "But Master, it was perfect. It was whole. It survived so long. Did it?" the Master asked. "Or were we pretending it would last forever? When I drank from this cup, I didn't love it because it was eternal. I loved it because each sip was a gift, temporary, precious, already passing." The Master gathered several fragments. This cup fulfilled its purpose magnificently. For 7 generations, it held tea that nourished bodies and conversations that awakened minds. It warmed hands on cold mornings. It brought communities together for ceremonies that deepened understanding. He stood, brushing fragments from his robes with gentle care. Its value wasn't in permanence, that was always illusion. Its value was in faithful service, moment by precious moment, until this moment when it teaches its final lesson. The greatest tragedy wouldn't be this cup breaking, Wei Ming. The tragedy would be loving it less because we knew it would break. Wisdom is learning to love more deeply, not despite impermanence, but because of it. Now, shall we prepare tea? I have another cup in my quarters. It too is broken, of course, it simply hasn't revealed its brokenness yet. And when it does, we'll receive that teaching with equal gratitude. As students helped collect fragments, the Master insisted they be saved as reminders. He continued, "Look around you. The cherry blossoms you admire bloom for only weeks each year. Are they less beautiful for their brevity? Mountains that seem permanent are constantly shaped by wind and rain. Your own faces change daily, showing new expressions of gathered wisdom." One student asked, "Master, how do we live knowing everything breaks?" "Ah," smiled Huangpu, "wrong question. Ask instead, how do we love knowing everything breaks? How do we create knowing that everything changes? How do we commit knowing nothing lasts forever? We love more fully, create more authentically, and commit more wholeheartedly precisely because of impermanence. When we understand that this moment will never come again, we stop taking anything for granted." Part 2, Modern Attachments, the Weight We Don't See. Our Invisible Chains. You might think, beautiful story, but I'm not attached to teacups. But feel into your honest response to these questions. How did you feel when your phone battery died during an important call? When did your favorite restaurant close permanently? When did friendship gradually fade despite your efforts? When you realize in a mirror that you're no longer the young person you feel like inside? That chest tightness, that resistance, that voice protesting, "This shouldn't happen." That's what Buddha called tanha, our deep attachment to how we believe life should unfold according to our preferences. Sarah's Perfect Life, a modern parable. Sarah was 32, a marketing executive, and everyone said she really had her life together. Over 3 meticulous years, She crafted what she called her perfect life, a gorgeous Capitol Hill apartment with exposed brick and bay views, a meaningful job at a sustainable fashion startup, an ideal relationship with Marcus, an environmental lawyer who shared her values and 5-year plan. Her bedroom wall displayed vision boards of her ideal future. She maintained color-coded calendars, established retirement investments for world travel at 55, and tracked progress toward every major goal on detailed spreadsheets. Her Instagram was curated perfection, artful flat whites, hiking photos with perfect hair, and couple selfies radiating contentment. Friends regularly commented, "You're living the dream." Sarah smiled, feeling she'd cracked the happiness formula. But life had different plans that ignored Sarah's careful preparations. Within 6 devastating months, everything crumbled. Her company couldn't compete with fast fashion giants. Layoffs started in March. Sarah watched colleagues turn friends pack belongings into boxes, faces hollow with professional displacement. Then Marcus announced over dinner at their first date restaurant that he'd accepted a position teaching English in rural Thailand. He felt called to experience authentic living away from their materialistic bubble. The stability Sarah worked to create now felt like a cage to her planned life partner. As if completing her impermanence lesson, her landlord called next week, selling the building to developers. 60 days to find new housing in a market where rents had increased by 40%. 3 months later, Sarah sat on moving boxes in her empty apartment, scrolling through photos that felt like artifacts from someone else's life. The confident woman in those images seemed a stranger who believed in permanence with touching naivety. "I worked so hard for this," she whispered during late-night calls to her mother. "I followed all the smart rules. Made responsible choices. Planned carefully. This wasn't supposed to happen." But Sarah wasn't grieving her apartment, job, or relationship. She was mourning her fundamental illusion that she could create a life immune to change, the death of her belief that enough planning and smart choices could build a fortress against uncertainty. We all do this. We treat careers like permanent identities, forgetting that industries transform overnight. We love children as if they'll never develop independent opinions. We plan retirement as if bodies and minds remain static for 30 years. We argue with friends as if we have unlimited time for resolution, postponing difficult conversations until someday becomes never. We take health for granted until symptoms appear. We assume parents will always be a phone call away, until suddenly they're not. Before you subscribe to Buddha Coha for more transformative wisdom like this, let me share what the Buddha taught about why attachment creates such suffering. Recent research shows we spend 47% of waking hours thinking about something other than current experience. We're mentally time traveling, rehearsing future conversations, replaying past mistakes, planning scenarios that may never occur. This isn't random wandering. It's our attachment system working overtime, constantly scanning for threats to things we decided we need for security and identity. Consider daily mental energy spent, controlling how others perceive you professionally. Maintaining self-images disconnected from who you're becoming. Worrying about losing current possessions or relationships. Regretting unchangeable past situations. Forcing current situations to match expectations. Planning futures to avoid uncertainty. The paradox: the more we try creating security through control, the more insecure we become. Tighter gripping makes us notice every shift threatening our grip. Sarah's story continued unexpectedly. After 6 months of complete life meltdown, she worked part-time at a community garden, lived in a shared house with 3 others, navigating transitions, discovering parts of herself she'd never explored. I kept waiting for my real life to return, she shared. It took almost a year to realize this is my real life. The other thing was me trying to live someone else's idea of what my life should look like. I'm happier now, though nothing looks like what I thought I wanted. I sleep better, worry less, feel more flexible. Like I can handle whatever comes because I know I can handle change. Part 3, Buddha's teaching on universal impermanence. 2,500 years ago, under a Bodhi tree in northern India, Prince Siddhartha experienced an awakening that transformed humanity's understanding of suffering and happiness. His first insight wasn't achieving permanent bliss. It was seeing reality exactly as it exists, not as wishes, fears, and projections would have it, but as it fundamentally is. He saw the tilakkhana, 3 universal characteristics of existence. First was anicca, impermanence. Buddha taught, sab sankhara anicca, all conditioned things are impermanent. This isn't spiritual poetry. This is physics describing constant subatomic motion, biology explaining daily cellular replacement, psychology revealing thoughts arising and dissolving like waves, cosmology showing even stars being born and dying in cosmic cycles, dwarfing human comprehension. Buddha didn't teach impermanence to depress us, but to liberate us from the exhausting project of making temporary things permanent. Understanding change as the only constant, we stop fighting the river and learn to swim with its currents. In the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, his first teaching after enlightenment, Buddha outlined the 4 noble truths. First noble truth, life contains dukkha. Dukkha isn't just suffering, it's persistent dissatisfaction, like wearing shoes that never quite fit. The background anxiety is knowing that whatever we have, we'll lose. Whatever we achieve will change. Whoever we love, will eventually separate from. But crucial insight, dukkha doesn't come from things changing. It comes from our resistance to change, our demand that reality differ from what it is. Second noble truth, the cause is tanha. Tanha means thirst, desperate reaching for something to quench existential unease. Buddha identified 3 types, craving sensual pleasures, craving existence permanence, and craving non-existence escape. 2 of 3 directly relate to rejecting impermanence. Third noble truth, liberation is possible. Complete freedom from unnecessary suffering, not by stopping change, impossible, but by changing our relationship to change itself. Fourth noble truth, the path exists. The Eightfold Path, 8 practices training us to live wisely with impermanence rather than exhaustively against it. The 3 jewels of understanding. Buddha revealed 3 characteristics of all existence. 1. Anicca, impermanence. Everything changes constantly. Current problems are changing. Current joys are evolving. Your body, relationships, and self-understanding, all in dynamic flux. This isn't reality's flaw, it's existence's creative rhythm, making growth, healing, and transformation possible. Buddha said, all formations are impermanent. Strive diligently. Not fear-based urgency, but love-based urgency, recognizing this moment's unrepeatable, infinite preciousness. 2. Dukkha, suffering dissatisfaction relating to impermanent things as permanent creates constant underlying suffering. Like building houses on rivers, beautiful architecture, but foundations keep shifting. When we align with impermanence instead of fighting it, dukkha transforms. Changes that once caused suffering become dance steps of life lived in harmony with reality. 3. Anatta, non-self. Even our sense of a fixed, unchanging self is an illusion. You're not the same person who started this video. You're not a static thing, you're a dynamic process, like rivers maintaining shape while composed of completely different water moment to moment. This isn't frightening, it's liberating. Never trapped by past selves. Growth and transformation aren't exceptions to identity, they are identity. If feeling overwhelmed, that's natural. Culture trains us to think, building something lasting, till death do us part, creating legacy. But what if those concepts describe engagement intensity with reality, not conditioned permanence? Part 4. Practical wisdom, living the teaching daily. Learning to dance with change. How do we live with this knowledge? Love deeply, knowing loss is inevitable. Build meaningfully when nothing lasts forever. Find genuine security in a constantly changing universe. The answer lies not in detachment, becoming emotionally cold, but in Buddha's anicca, gradually releasing clinging while remaining fully, passionately engaged with being alive. Think of dancing. You don't stop music or freeze in a perfect position. You move with rhythm, responding fluidly while maintaining balance and grace. Living wisely with impermanence is learning to dance with existence itself. Practice 1. The Cherry Blossom Meditation. In Japan, Hanami celebrates cherry blossom appreciation. Millions gather to witness something lasting only days. These flowers don't apologize for brevity or resist natural cycles. They bloom with complete commitment, then release petals like confetti, celebrating their own impermanence. People don't mourn falling blossoms, they celebrate brief beauty more intensely because of temporality. There's even no aware, bittersweet awareness of all things impermanence, finding profound beauty precisely because things don't last. Your practice, for 7 days, choose something you love and approach it with cherry blossom consciousness. Morning coffee, really taste it, knowing this exact combination will never exist again. Friend conversations, listen aware that their voice, expressions, and unique perspective are temporary and precious. Pets' homecoming greeting, receive their enthusiasm knowing both of you are aging, this relationship existing within time's transforming bubble. Notice how this changes attention quality. Discover that impermanence doesn't diminish love, it deepens it exponentially. Practice 2. The Mindful Release Technique. When noticing yourself clinging to outcomes not manifesting, identities no longer fitting, naturally evolving relationship dynamics, try this gentle practice. Place both hands on your heart. Feel the rhythm, steady now, constantly responding to thoughts and emotions. This heartbeat perfectly metaphorizes life, reliable patterns within constant change. Take 3 conscious breaths. Feel ribcage expanding and contracting, demonstrating receiving and releasing rhythm governing all healthy life. Speak these phrases with genuine kindness. This too is changing, and change is reality's nature. I can hold this lightly while caring deeply. I'm safe in life's flow, even without controlling outcomes. My worth doesn't depend on making impermanent things permanent. I can love fully without possessing completely. This isn't giving up or becoming passive. It's engaging from flow rather than fear, curiosity rather than control. Practice 3. The already broken perspective. Remember the Master's teaching that the cup was already broken when created? This practice recognizes inherent impermanence in everything encountered, not becoming morbid, but dramatically increasing appreciation and presence. Looking at your home, see a temporary shelter currently serving beautifully rather than a permanent possession. Interacting with loved ones, see fellow travelers sharing your journey through time rather than permanent fixtures. Mirror reflections. Instead of fighting natural aging, see changing faces as stories written in real time, each line an experienced chapter, each gray hair a survived season and gained wisdom. This perspective isn't pessimistic, it's liberating. Accepting everything as already broken, you stop living in constant future loss fear and start living in constant present gift appreciation. Practice 4. Flow state engagement. Most practical impermanence application, engaging fully with current activities without attachment to specific results. Working on projects, pour yourself completely in, not desperately attached to outcomes, but because this creative engagement moment is itself the gift. Process is the point. Difficult conversations, be fully present, not controlling outcomes, but because this human experience exchange, this mind and heart meeting, is temporary and therefore sacred. Exercising, feel current body capabilities without comparing past performance or worrying about future limitations. Cooking, engage with process, chopping, seasoning, transformation alchemy, without attachment to perfect results. Real-life example, David sand sculptures. David, a street artist, creates elaborate beach sand sculptures, intricate designs requiring 6 to 8 hours. Tourists constantly ask, "Doesn't it make you sad the tide will wash this away?" David responds, "That assumes my joy comes from sculpture lasting. But joy comes from creating. Every placed grain, every carved detail, that's where value lies. The sculpture is just evidence I was fully alive those hours. If these lasted forever, they'd be world clutter. Being temporary, each one is a gift, to me while creating, you while witnessing, the ocean reclaiming materials, the beach becoming smooth again for tomorrow's creation." David embodies Buddha's teaching, temporary doesn't mean meaningless. Often, temporary things touch us most deeply because we can't take them for granted. Part 5. The freedom of letting go. When we stop fighting the river. Beautiful paradox in Buddhist wisdom, the more we accept impermanence, the more present we become. The more present, the more we touch something eternal within each fleeting moment. The more we release control attempts, the more actual influence we have on our life experience. Buddha said, "Happiness doesn't depend on what you have or who you are. It solely relies on what you think." Deeper interpretation, happiness depends on how lightly you hold thoughts, how gracefully you let them arise and pass away, how spaciously you relate to constant mental and emotional weather flowing through awareness. The monk and the heavy stone. 2 monks encountered a massive boulder blocking their mountain path to the monastery. The younger immediately began pushing with all might, face red with exertion, struggling for 20 minutes while the older monk observed peacefully. Finally, the younger gasped, "Why aren't you helping? This stone is incredibly heavy. We'll never move it alone." The older monk smiled. "You're working so hard. Of course. Someone has to. We need to reach the monastery before evening prayers." "Indeed, we do. Have you considered walking around it?" The younger stopped and stared. Just steps to either side were clear paths around the boulder, obvious routes back to the main trail. But the stone still blocks the road. For whom? Asked the older gently. The stone is exactly where it needs to be. We have somewhere to be. The mountain arranged this teaching for us. Why should any of us suffer because we're not all in the same place? How many heavy stones are we pushing against in our lives? How many problems exist only because we insist reality should differ from what it is? Sacred impermanence art. When we truly embrace impermanence, something miraculous happens. We stop living in anxious futures or regretful pasts. We land fully in the present moment, the only place where life actually occurs. Current problems. They're changing even as you worry. Current joys. They're deepening when you appreciate their temporality. Current relationships. They're evolving whether you resist or flow with evolution. Current self. It's transforming with every breath, experience, and awareness moment. This isn't loss, it's liberation of the most profound kind. You're never truly stuck, regardless of how permanent circumstances appear. Growth and healing remain always possible because change is existence's fundamental nature. No matter how dark things seem, dawn is built into reality's fabric. Buddha taught, just as a mother would protect her only child with her life, even so let one cultivate boundless love towards all beings. This love includes loving everyone and everything's impermanent nature. Not loving despite change, but loving change itself as existence's very heartbeat. The deepest teaching. So returning to our original question, if nothing is permanent, what are we holding on to? Perhaps we're holding on to the very holding itself. Perhaps we're clinging to our clinging. But what if, instead of holding, we learned carrying? Instead of grasping, we learned cradling. Instead of possessing, we learned to appreciate. Cherry blossoms teach that beauty and impermanence aren't opposites, they're dance partners. Rivers teach that flow and stillness coexist. Breath teaches that letting go and receiving are the same cycle parts. Buddha's final words, all conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your salvation with diligence. I offer this gentle interpretation, work out your peace with presence. Find your freedom in the flowing. Closing, your invitation to freedom. Your practice this week. Choose one thing you've been holding too tightly, maybe a plan not working out, an image of who you should be, or hurt from years past. For 1 week, experiment with holding it more lightly. Not abandoning or ignoring it, just loosening your grip a little. Notice what happens when creating space around this attachment. Notice breathing changes, shoulders dropping, how life continues supporting you even when you're not controlling everything. If this teaching has touched your heart, please subscribe to Buddha Coha. We're creating a community of souls learning to find peace in life's flowing nature. Ring the notification bell to join us on this awakening journey to the beautiful impermanence of existence. Final blessing. May you find freedom in the temporary. May you discover love in the letting go. May you taste the eternal living within each passing moment. May you dance with change as cherry blossoms dance with the wind. May you remember, you are not what you hold on to. You are the awareness that can hold everything lightly. Thank you for sharing this journey with me today. Until our paths cross again in this beautiful, ever-changing web of existence, may you walk gently with the sacred impermanence of this one precious, unrepeatable life.